Suspiria is generally held up as the supreme example of pure filmmaking excess over story, which makes sense, I guess. Its director Dario Argento was mainly concerned, it seems, with making a film where the horror comes not so much from the plot as from its execution, but this reading dismisses a lot of what makes the film great. Sure, like the cabinet of Dr. Caligari before it, much of the horror in Suspiria does come from the presentation of the settings, characters, and events, rather than any of those things in themselves. Caligari is a pretty standard murder mystery, as is Suspiria until the end, but the expressionistic set design, the look of the characters, and in the case of Suspiria, the soundtrack by prog rock group Goblin, all make the film effectively horrifying, rather than the story itself being innately scary. John Coulthard noted in the book Horror, the film starts with a climax and builds from there, and he's right. Kinda. We're greeted with a cacophony of drums and the film's now legendary music box theme as Susie leaves the airport in Freiburg, Germany, where she has travelled to hone her skills as a ballet dancer, although, as we'll see, she doesn't actually get around to much dancing. Immediately, the seemingly mundane appearance of a set of automatic doors is given confusing prominence as an object from real life is transformed into a kind of guillotine, hissing and chopping at the air. Susie moves on with apprehension, looking like she's walking to the gallows. It seems to menace her as she walks through, unscathed, but the close-ups on the mechanism give us the uneasy sense that while she's walking outside, she is also walking into a trap. But this is more than just a spooky airport arrival. Argento is already planting the idea of doors equating to danger in our heads, and throughout the film the motif of doors and sight recurs as Susie becomes embroiled in the web of deception and trickery that awaits her at the Tanz Academy. Really, at the heart of Suspiria is not the flashing lights of doom and the soundtrack which draws so much attention to itself that the film practically becomes a musical, but the idea of the danger of uncertainty. Susie doesn't know what is going on, and neither do we, until the very end of the film, and every time we're given hints at the truth behind the curtain, it's obscured, either by the lies of the Tanz Academy's instructors, or by actual curtains and doors. When Susie's friend Sarah begins to share her suspicions that the teachers who supposedly leave at night are actually staying somewhere in the building, Susie is too drowsy to really understand, but we're given plenty of reasons to suspect that something is really wrong with this place. As the lights turn out and everything becomes bathed in the same sickly neon glow that dominated Susie's taxi journey to the academy, we are once again put on edge. Sarah creeps out into the hallway as an unseen force opens the other door to Susie's room. We see Susie sleeping and vulnerable from the point of view of the vaguely defined antagonist, once again reinforcing the idea that Susie is in danger because she's unaware of the danger, and that the forces conspiring against her are fully aware of this. Meanwhile, Sarah, having moved through the door from the relative safety of Susie's room, is now dwarfed by the imposing size and hellish red light of the outside, the danger zone, and she runs haphazardly around trying to find the truth or just a sense of safety, but she learns too late that trying to peer behind the veil is just as dangerous as being blind to the danger. Sarah goes up to the attic, which earlier in the film was filled with maggots gnawing at rotting food, reminding us that something putrid and foul is at work here, the cold blue light also reflecting the slow tension that breaks up the sudden bursts of violence in the film. Argento tracks Sarah as she wanders blindly across the room in an uncharacteristically silent moment, until she knocks open another door which is blended into the wall. Strange blue lights flash along to the sudden sound of ominous sighs, and Sarah hesitates before backing away until here, which is, for me at least, by far the scariest moment of the film. We see a pair of eyes behind Sarah. It's not acknowledged by a musical sting like so many modern horror films would use. It's just there for you to notice, to suddenly realise that Sarah is effectively dead at this point, but she hasn't seen the danger she's in. We build a surprisingly slow, deliberate and quiet sense of dread, which reaches an abrupt crescendo as a hand suddenly lurches into frame and the music comes clattering back with a vengeance. The red neon glow comes crashing through a window Sarah smashes, and although she escapes for a moment, we know that there's no way out for her. Suspiria is an incredibly noisy film thanks in no small part to the iconic soundtrack which blares out during particularly heightened moments of tension and violence. But you can't make a film that's all loud all the time. That would become draining and ultimately tedious. Something that isn't mentioned much when people talk about Suspiria is the slowly unfolding malevolence of the teachers. It's almost Rosemary's Baby-esque in its unfurling conspiracy. Between the bombastic murder set pieces, there's a more subtle kind of horror where Sarah and Susie begin to uncover the lies they've been told. In her very first meeting with the deputy directress, Susie is told that the directress is out of the country, yet we hear her distinctive raspy breathing several times, despite never seeing her properly. Like in Rosemary's Baby, Susie begins to suspect that the people who are gradually taking control of her life don't have her best interests at heart, and she throws out the specially prepared food they've been giving her and goes to investigate what's really going on and finds that she's been targeted by a coven of witches. There's a rising sense of dread we get from the dawning realization that the teachers who initially seemed friendly and understated, never doing anything that couldn't be waved away as perfectly benevolent attempts to help Susie, have really been luring her in this whole time. When Susie first enters the academy, she is following after Daniel, the blind piano player, who is also killed when he tells one of the teachers,
I'm going, but try to understand that I'm blind, not deaf. Get it? Huh? Not deaf.
In the beginning, Susie following a blind man obviously has connotations of her being blind to the reality of the academy and to the danger she's in, but like Daniel, it's through the things she hears, the sighing of the directress, the paranoid rantings of Sarah, and the teachers waving away all their disappearances that piques Susie's curiosity. When she finally finds the witch's den, Sarah's corpse is laid out in a cruel display with needles stuck in her eyes, the price for seeing too much of the truth. And when Susie finds the directress and finally pulls back the curtain, she disappears. As is the case throughout the film, where Susie obliviously wanders deeper and deeper into the web of deceit laid out by the coven, becoming increasingly convinced that there's some kind of vague conspiracy against her. It's Susie's blind stabbing at a fuzzy outline that finally brings the coven down. And as the directress is killed, Sarah vanishes. The lesser witches choke and bleed to death, and as Susie flees, the whole building begins to violently explode around her. Although Suspiria is mainly celebrated, and rightly so, for its noisy set pieces, iconic music, and colour-drenched lighting, to me, it's still underappreciated for its carefully unfurling mystery. The recurring ideas of what we can and cannot see, linked to the potential danger of ignorance, and even further danger stemming from trying to see past the doors and curtains and disembodied points of view shots, which never actually show us who is committing these murders, all make Suspiria a compelling and chilling story. It's a thrilling explosion of drums and screams, maybe the best ever example of just throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, but without its excellent use of symbolism and mystery, it would all just amount to an incomprehensible wall of noise. It's the difficult and painful refusal that ignorance is bliss that ultimately lands everyone else in a coffin, but Susie laughing triumphantly as the evil burns behind her.